Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Harley, and I'm the CEO of Nurses Specialized in Wound, Ostomy, and Continence Canada. This evening, we are very pleased to bring you an educational webinar in partnership with McKin Health. And the webinar is called Manage the Change, an Innovative Approach for Ostomy Patients. We will first have the presentation, and you'll get to listen to the speakers and the information and knowledge that they will bring to you. And then we'll finish it with a question and answer period. So please put your questions in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of the screen versus the chat, because we'll be picking up the questions from the Q&A box. I would like to thank Michael Arab, President of McKin Health, who is here with us this evening for his partnership in this webinar, and Amy Zhu, the account manager, who's also present this evening. And now I would like to introduce our guest speakers. Our first guest speaker is Laureen Sommerey. She's been a registered nurse for 40 years, and she has a passion that's been for direct patient care. For the first 25 years after graduating with a diploma in nursing, she worked in a variety of acute care areas, including surgery, pediatrics, ostomy, and wound care. During this time, she completed her Bachelor of Nursing and enterostomal therapy nursing. And the next 5 years, she spent as an NSWOC at a tertiary acute care hospital, and it was a career highlight and sparked a passion for staff education. Laureen went on to complete her master's in nursing in 2014. After leaving the acute care and the bedside, she's worked in a variety of educator and management and leadership positions, including clinical nurse specialist. Following her recent retirement, Laureen is currently employed as a manager of clinical resources for Nightingale Medical Supplies, where she provides clinical consultations with ostomy clients and support and resources to the other NSWOC consultants. So we welcome Laureen. The second presenter will be Theresa Johnson, Chief Operating Officer of Stomagienics. Having more than 25 years of experience in administration, mergers and acquisition, and corporate initiatives, Theresa's life course took a real turn when her father, Lenny Goudry, had urostomy surgery in 2013. Her experience as one of his caregivers exposed the struggle of living with an ostomy. The most severe impact on his quality of life was the ability to control stoma output during the pouch change. As a result, he became severely depressed and recluse. His refusal to live that way drove him to invent a tool and eventually named it Stomagienics. That changed his life drastically. As a result, she co-created Stomagienics, which is dedicated to defining ostomy-related challenges and creating reliable, proven solutions. In addition, she's becoming a recognizable advocate for the ostomy community. And our last speaker is Reid Johnson, who's the Chief Innovative Officer of Stomagienics. He brings a wealth of experience around product design, prototyping, and usability testing. And as a president and CEO of Usability and later Asolid Solution, he led employee customer usability projects with various products and situations for Fortune 500 companies such as IBM, Motorola, Target stores, and Samsung. And so when approached to fill this vital role within Stomagienics and realizing the potential that he had to make an impact on the ostomy community, he became the third company co-founder. And so he's been involved in the product innovation and design and has been working with the ostomy and WOCC community. In addition, he oversees the facility that builds and ships Stomagienics products internationally. And so now I would like to turn things over to Laureen Sommerey, and I'll be back for the Q&A. Laureen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm totally overwhelmed that over 140 of you have chosen to spend some of your busy time with us, and welcome and thank you for joining. Next slide, please, Amy. So tonight we're going to talk about skin breakdown and peristomal skin conditions. And we're going to talk about waste as well as the financial impact of failed pouching system changes. Reed and Theresa are going to share with us their innovative products. And we'll just provide some information on some different options that are new to the marketplace. Next slide, please. So when I was first asked by Mike to present tonight, the idea was that I was going to kind of give you some basic information on stomas and stoma care and that type of thing. Upon further reflection, I felt that many of you are very knowledgeable in the area, so I didn't want to bore people. So what I decided to do was just have a quick look at the literature and see what was new out there. So I just did like a real quick literature review, just 2022, 2023. It's not a complete review by any stretch. I'm just highlighting some of the really interesting data that I came across. So it's not a literature synthesis or scoping review or anything fancy. It's just really what I came across that was interesting to me. And I can share any of the references on request. I don't have them in the PowerPoint. So the first article we're going to talk about, so we're just going to focus on 4 articles and the data that they provided. So the first one is Ababula et al. From 2022. And what they did was they used a modified Delphi panel consisting of patients. So it was 12 patients in the UK. And what they were looking for was consensus on problems faced by those with a stoma, as well as calls to action or solutions to address those problems. Next. The next article is Jensen et al. 2022. And in this study, they were looking to understand behavioral changes for people experiencing fecal leakage outside of the base plate. And it was a retrospective self-reported questionnaire that they used. And there was 597 participants from 5 countries. So quite a few people involved there. The next 2 studies are related to the Ostomy Life study that was done in 2019. And that study, there was over 5,000 people completed the initial questionnaire. And then those that didn't irrigate their stoma were invited to answer questions related to leakage and peristomal skin breakdown. And so in the end, there was over 4,000 participants from 17 countries. So the first article that's using that data is Jeppesen et al. And their aim was to investigate the impact of leakage on individuals with a stoma. And yeah, and then also Martins et al. And their focus was really around body profile. Next slide, please. So in Canada, it's estimated that there's 70,000 Canadians living with an ostomy, and that having an ostomy impacts both physical and mental health. In the Ababula study, the issues that made life challenging are listed on your screen, and you can see that leakage is by far at the top of the list. Next slide, please. So the majority of those with a stoma recognized that it impacted their mental health, and it impacted them as far as body image, which interestingly, I guess not surprisingly though, generally decreases over time. And a big concern was perception of other people about them having a stoma, as well as stigma. So those were identified kind of as the big impacts on mental health. Martin's reported that 62% of people with a stoma refrain from certain physical and social activities, which includes things like traveling, sports, visiting friends, all because of their stoma. So that kind of broke my heart a little bit. Next slide, please. So Ababula, they did identify some ways to improve mental health. And it was identified that perioperative healthcare and support and care was really important, as well as long-term healthcare support and care. Access to holistic care also can positively impact body image. Peer support and specialist nursing care was identified as improving the quality of life, and that social media was really important in the role of peer support. And they also identified that there were benefits in telling others about their stoma-related experience, because for the most part, they had a positive reaction from people. So it kind of went against what they initially thought when they got their stoma. They wanted kind of to be secretive, but they did find that sharing their experience was actually valuable. Next slide, please. Next slide, Amy. Oh, perfect. There's a bit of a lag, I think. So as I mentioned, access to specialist stoma care and peer support, as well as expert information, were the three things that really supported people to adapt to life with a stoma. Next slide, please. So as I already mentioned, leakage, as I'm sure none of us are surprised to find out, is one of the top concerns of those living with a stoma. And I guess just something I had never really thought about, but in the literature, they really differentiate the type of leakage. So it's kind of three different things. So there's leakage under the flange or the base plate. There's leakage that's outside of the flange and base plate, and leakage onto the clothes. And so different studies were really looking at different types of leakage. So it makes it a little bit challenging really to compare apples to apples, which is real common with research, as we all know. Next slide, please. So Martins et al. Identified that leakage under the base plate was more likely with fecal stomas, and it was more likely with ileostomies than colostomies. And leakage onto clothing was more likely with ileostomies or urostomies compared to colostomy. Next slide, please. So more than 70% of those living with an ostomy experienced leakage under their base plate, 76% in the previous month, and 32% in the previous week. So leakage is happening a lot for people. And 42% experienced leakage outside of their flange in the previous 2 weeks, with only 58% reporting that they had no leakage. And sadly, 12.6% had more than 3 incidents of leakage outside of the flange in the previous 2 weeks. And in the past 3 months, 65% experienced leakage outside of the flange. And again, in my mind, a really high number that almost 32% had more than 3 incidents of leakage outside of their flange in the previous 3 months. Next slide, please. So leakage onto the clothes, of course, is a big issue. And again, really high numbers. Over 60% of those with a stoma experience leakage onto their clothes. 66% in the previous year, 55% in the previous 6 months, 26% in the previous month, and 9% in the past week. And 16% of those that had weekly episodes of leakage onto their clothing had recent stoma surgeries. So they had had their stomas for less than a year, whereas 7% had their stomas for more than a year. So it did improve marginally for people as time went on. Next slide, please. So this was something that I guess I just never really thought about, but it was really talked a lot about in the literature, was worry about leakage. So leakage incidents are one thing, but the worrying about leakage is incredibly impactful on people's lives, with around 90% worrying about leakage. And I'm not going to get into, but I think we all have, you know, some idea what worry and anxiety does to our mental health. So it's significant impact on people, with almost 40% reporting high to a very high degree of worry. Worry, of course, increased the more leakage incidents people had. And of course, people who had their stoma for less than a year reported a higher degree of worry than those who had their stoma for more than a year. And effluent, of course, had a impact as well, with those with mushy effluent worrying more about leakage compared to those with firm output. And listed on your screen, you can see the things that people were worried about was, you know, soiling of their clothes, their bed sheets, odor, embarrassment, skin issues, and waking up at night. Next slide, please. So why do we care about leakage? It definitely impacts people's lives. So most commonly, we think about peristomal skin complications, at least as NSWOCs. That's one of the first outcomes that we see when people do have leakage challenges. Next slide, please. But there's a lot more to it. And the negative impact on quality of life is increased with episodes of leakage. So the more leakage people have, the more impact on their quality of life, and especially if the leakage is onto their clothing. Next slide, please. Leakage also has a negative impact on people's social life, with 20% reporting that leakage made them stay home often or all the time. 13% reported that the risk of leakage made them avoid people often or all of the time. And 15% reported that leakage led to them avoiding close physical contact with family or friends often or all the time. Next slide, please. So leakage really impacts people's ability to cope. With those experiencing leakage, 25% reported that they were only able to cope sometimes or rarely or never. And feeling in control was another thing, or lack of control, I guess, with regard to leakage. And with 21% saying that sometimes they didn't feel in control, and 16% saying that they rarely or never felt like they were in control. And those with a stoma, 72% reported that they were checking their pouching system for leakage. And I found this really high, that 28% sometimes, and these are people that were purposely waking up at night to check, and 16% were doing that often, and 10% all the time. So again, we know the impact of lack of sleep on mental as well as physical health. Next slide, please. Leakage also had a negative impact on work life, with 65% reporting that it impacted their ability to work and 15% actually reporting that it was highly affected or actually completely prevented them from working. And what they were concerned about was their ability to attend work, their absenteeism, the trouble that they could get in from being absent so much, as well as how worrying about how they were going to meet their stomach care needs in the workplace, especially when it was related to leakage. Next slide. So this slide made me quite sad, to be honest. So those that were experiencing leakage outside of the base plate, almost 80% didn't seek help from a healthcare professional, and 29% just simply accepted that they just had to live with worrying about their leakage. Next slide, please. So those who did experience leakage, Jensen et al. Did some really interesting work. And they were able to quantify some of the cost related. So those who experience leakage, they increase the frequency of their pouching system changes, and a small number changed to a different pouching system. About a quarter of people increase the use of their current accessories, and somewhere around 20 to 50% actually add additional accessories to their pouching system. And the more they're worried about leakage, the more accessories that they use. And it was actually similar amounts of accessory usage for fecal and urostomy. And next slide, please. So I'm sorry, I think I said Jensen et al. Did the quantifying work, but it was Jeppesen. And they, of course, this work was in the UK, so it doesn't translate directly across, obviously, but around $50 Canadian for a single episode of leakage. And that includes the professional healthcare visits when people did, but we do know 80% actually don't seek any help. And if we think about the 70,000 or 700,000 Canadians living with an ostomy, and the amount of leakage people are having, you know, on a weekly, monthly, bi-weekly basis, those dollars add up rather quickly. Next slide, please. So my takeaways from this research, and it's really the conclusions of the authors rather than my takeaways, but these were the things that really stood out to me. That leakage has a large impact on daily life and can cause both physical and mental health difficulties. That the current stomach care products do not sufficiently address and limit the issue of worrying about leakage. New stomach care products or solutions are warranted that can reduce the number of incidents of leakage outside of the base plate. And implementation of stomach care innovations that can reduce leakage may potentially limit overuse of stomach care products. And on that note, I will pass this over to Stomagienics, and we can hear about some of their innovative products.
Thank you, Laureen. That was a wonderful presentation. Very, very informative. And like you said, many of those statistics have broken my heart as well. So let me tell you a little bit about how we began. My father, Liney Guidry, had bladder cancer and had to have his bladder removed in 2013, which resulted in an ostomy. Our family did a lot of research, you know, thinking that, you know, going into this, knowing that it was going to be an option, we could prepare ourselves as much as possible. And boy, did we not even begin to skim the surface of ostomy life and the challenges that followed. My dad, who was extremely independent and was a chemical engineer, so everything was organized, everything had to go a certain way. he really struggled with the lack of control and the poor hygiene that he experienced while trying to change his ostomy pouch. And as a result of that, we watched him become very depressed and reclusive. He would never go outside. He did not want to risk the leakage, as Laureen was talking about, that could potentially happen. So just being a very motivated individual, he just absolutely refused to live his life this way. And he just picked himself up by the bootstraps and went to an Ace Hardware store and just grabbed pieces and parts of different things. And he created a device that we saw literally change his life overnight. And he was back out on the Gulf fishing all the time at his camp. He was working out in the club 4 days a week, working in the yard, working in his garden. It was like nothing ever happened to him. And it was night and day, from somebody that didn't even speak hardly at all to back to his bouncy self again. And we were just ecstatic. So next slide, Amy, thanks. So we recognized that this was a serious gap in care for the ostomy community as a whole. And we were thinking, well, this happened for my dad, who else is experiencing these things? And what could we do? So we knew that this product helped. We did our research and we created our company Stomagienics, and the products that you will learn about tonight that are designed to promote ostomy health and lead to a more smoother transition in the recovery process, and which all in all can lead to a very healthy and happy life. Next. So what are the ostomy care challenges, along with what Laureen outlined? The ostomy pouch changing process hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 70 years or so. And there has never been a way to capture the output other than grab a napkin, get some paper towels, have a washcloth ready for when your stoma becomes active. It often leads to a very unsanitary environment. Effluent can get on the person. It can get everywhere in the bathroom or even in your treatment areas. And it just can potentially leave the peristomal skin not clean enough, not dry enough, which can lead to leakage. It can lead to peristomal skin complications. And most of all, on top of all of this is the anxiety and the loss of confidence and respect, and just extremely stressful when it comes to changing a pouch. Next. So here's the current protocol. Step 1, you remove the pouching system. Step 2, you attempt to clean and dry that peristomal skin that is probably having an active stoma erupting. And then you're supposed to place the new pouching system on clean, dry skin. So when the stoma is left exposed during the change process, there's no control over the stoma output. Things can get contaminated, as I mentioned. The ostomate themselves, the caregiver, are exposed to this caustic waste. The effluent can get trapped underneath the new assembly that can lead to peristomal skin complications, and post-change cleanup is often a messy situation that is undesirable. Next, please. So here is, I'm going to introduce our Chief Innovation Officer, Reed Johnson, who's going to do a live demonstration for you and show you how our product works.
Excellent. Thanks, Theresa. Thanks, Laureen. That was excellent introduction as we got going. Yeah, I'm going to do a live demonstration. So we'll switch this to a live of me standing up. And what I'm going to do is actually adjust the screen so I can show the countertop and the supplies that we're using. This is our stoma simulator that we've created for demonstrating the Stomagieni. We use this in a lot of conferences and for training nurses and that sort of thing. So I'm going to make an adjustment here. Hopefully that doesn't cause my camera to go out. So basically, when we're working with patients or talking with nurses, we want to make sure, and as usual, have all their supplies ready and prepared on the near them as they're getting ready to change out their pouching system and before they remove the pouch. So, for example, we'd have them after they've cut the base plate, take the back off the base plate, get that prepared. You have our pouch available. We have our Stomagienie ready and our plug, any kind of cleaning material that they're going to use. If they're using barrier rings, you'd have that nearby. We recommend a lot of times if they're using a barrier ring, to place that on the back of the base plate. People do it both ways. Any other kind of supplies that they're going to have ready or near them, if they were using powder, just having that prepared and ready to go. So basically all they do, let me make a little adjustment here. When they get ready to take off the pouching system, they feel like they're prepared. They would take that off slowly, throw that away. And then if there's anything on the stoma, they can wipe that off. Then they put the cartridge over their stoma. So this is when they relax. This is when we hear this is the time that they typically, if they don't have this, they're either putting napkins or they're trying to hold that in place. This gives them time to start working with their supplies. So it's really a big deal for new patients too. So they're still learning and trying to learn how to do this process. It has a very big impact on them, but they're able to clean around their stoma. Let me see if I can get a better angle. You can switch up hands as you're kind of doing your maintenance, any other kind of supplies. But once you have that ready, you're ready to put on the new base plate. First, we're going to show you a 2-piece system, and then I'll show you how you can do that with a 1-piece system. They're used the same way. So as you take off the Stomagienie, I got ahead of myself. Before you take off the Stomagienie with a 2-piece, you would actually slide this over the top of the Stomagienie, and it acts as an alignment tool. So this is great for people that are new at this, or might be overweight or dexterity issues. The cartridge is in place. They can slide it down and they can, start preparing things around it. Now, we also have a product called a secure press, and Laureen talked about leakage, and this is an excellent tool for that. So they can actually slide that down over the cartridge, and it goes in between the flange in this ring, the most critical part, and they hold it there. And we recommend holding it there for 45, 60 seconds, just giving it pressure against your skin and making sure that the heat gives you a good solid seal. And then when you're done, you just take this off, set that down, put your new pouching system, your pouch on, and then you just plug up the Stomagienie and throw that away. So it's a very sanitary type of situation. You're not gathering up napkins and trying to clean up a mess. It just makes it so much easier for people to navigate the process. So with a 1-piece system, we'll get that prepared here. When they take off their pouching system, set that aside, put the cartridge over the stoma, do the cleaning, anything they have to do to prepare, and drying. That's a really big thing that people talk about, is having more time to let it dry, let the skin dry before they're trying to put up on the new pouching system. So with a 1-piece system, they would just have that ready, and when they've done prepared and they have dry skin, they just roll it right into place. So it's very easy for a 1-piece as well. And again, they just plug this up and throw it away. So that's the typical, just changing out the pouching system. We also get questions, and we're going to answer some questions, I'm sure, at the end of this, but we have people talk about odd-shaped stomas. So if it's not perfectly round like this, how would they use the product? Well, there's 2 ways. One is you can actually form the end of the cartridge to be oval, and it'll basically stay there. So they can use that to stick that over their stoma, nice and easy. We have a lot of people that do it that way. We also have some cases where people have very odd shaped stomas, maybe not even oval, but it has different parts to it. So we can actually create a custom adapter that what we have the patient do is take a picture of the back of the base plate after they've cut their unique shape into the base plate. They send that to us. I turn it into a 3D file, and this actually is an adapter that just goes on the cartridge and will go fit over their stoma perfectly, so that when they do cut their base plate and they slide it over the top, they know it's getting right next to the stoma, so it's not leaving any areas to leak. So that's a service we offer for no charge. It's every occasionally we'll just get people that need that. We also have a product called a hands-free unit. I think we can see it on the camera. So that's this area here. We've got a Stomagienie sticking inside of it. Now, this is what they could use to attach to the bathroom countertop. And if they have trouble with dexterity, we've had people that actually had one hand and use this, but you're able to walk up to it and use it as it holds it, the Stomagienie, so you can use both hands to do whatever you might have to do to reach for things. But it's nice to have that held in place for you where you're cleaning around the stoma. So that's the live demonstration. We'll be able to answer some questions at the end of the session, but I wanted to give you a quick idea of how that works. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Reed. Well done. So this is the cartridge. As you can see in the middle picture, it's lined with a super absorbency that actually swells. It does not gellify. It stays inside of the cartridge. Our average size can hold anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5, 4 ounces, depending on the size of the cartridge. Comes in 12 diameter sizes. This is something that is compatible with all pouching systems. And again, it reduces the anxiety that people get when they're trying to prepare their skin for the next pouching system, and it allows time to properly clean and prep that skin. And my saying is that they are no longer on stoma time, they are on their time now. They are able to take a breath and do as they please. This item is disposable. It is a one-time use, and the cartridge itself and interior, they are biodegradable. The plug is not, but we're working on that as well. Next. So we actually had St. Mark's Bowel Hospital reach out to us. They heard about our product and wanted to get some samples. Once they got it, they were really excited about it and decided to do a study. This was completely independent. All we did was supply them with our product, and the results were astonishing. They covered every single base that we could ever dream of. And so just some quick notes about this. Case study number 1, that individual helped restore her confidence, her ability to self-care, improve her quality of life, and reduce the waste of stoma products. If you get it right the first time, you don't have to worry about wasting those expensive products. After using case number 2, after they using the cartridge, that important sleep was restored. It eased her anxiety, allowed her to effectively manage that overactive stoma, and helped her reduce cost. Case number 3, he used the Stomagienies. They actually were able to train him in stoma care, reduce the anxiety, helped manage effectively overactive stomas, and potentially avoided hospital delays in hospital discharge. And I can add to that readmission and the costs associated with that. The use in case number 4, the Stomagienie actually facilitated stoma complication management procedures performed by the nurse, meaning in-clinic treatment. It allowed them to properly treat that skin, examine that skin, not have to worry about an overactive stoma and what cleanup could happen after that. And most of all, it gave that patient their dignity. They were able to sit there and look eye to eye to that nurse and understand what they're trying to communicate to them. They're not worrying about what's going on down on their abdomen. Next, please. Fistula use, that can be a really tough area of care. And the Stomagienie can actually be incorporated into the pouching system and treatment system and allow for an easier, more controlled fistula pouch. There's no contamination. Everything can go into that cartridge. This is actually a picture that a nurse in Virginia sent to me. They had been trying for 3 hours to pouch this poor woman. The fistula was just giving them fits. They have been trying to do this over the course of a couple of months and just were not getting anywhere. And then my nurse came in there, saw what was going on. She goes, "I've got the answer." So she went in and created this, and they were able to pouch that fistula in less than 30 minutes. The doctor was astonished. Next, please. So as Reed described, the secure press is designed to press that area between the stoma and the flange, that critical area that really needs to get a good solid press to minimize any chance of leakage next to the soma. Next, please. Our hands-free mount. This is something that we designed out of getting feedback from our patient. As Reed said, it mounts to the countertop. It's completely adjustable up. You can actually take that little arm out and put it upside down for people that are shorter or people that are in wheelchairs. This allows for a two-handed change, or people like that have the use of only one arm because of stroke, dexterity, like Reed described. They are now able to have that critical independence. They don't need to have anybody come and take care of them. They can do it for themselves. That promotes dignity, that promotes independence. Next, please. And ta-da, there are our products. The Stomagienie, the Secure Press, the hands-free mount, all designed out of a need that my father recognized, and we found solutions for. So thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you,
Theresa.
very much. Thank you. Thank you, Laureen and Theresa and Reed for an excellent presentation. A lot of questions have come in. I'll tell you one thing that I really stood up and took notice of, and that is when patients had leakage, 79% did not seek help from a healthcare professional. So that really tells us that we need to be reaching out and asking people if they are having issues. I'd like to get right into the questions here.
So Kathy, I think we just have a little bit more information about McKin, and I think I saw it come up in the chat. There was some questions about where to get them and how available they are and those kinds of things. And I think there's a slide or two that will explain that situation.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect.
We'll keep this part short, but I'd like to first of all thank Theresa, Reed, and Laureen for their presentation. My name is Amy, and I'm from McKin Health. So we're a Canadian provider of ostomy supplies. You may know us as distributors of Marlin and CUI hernia wear in Canada. And we're excited to add Stomagienics to part of our lineup. So the products discussed today are now available in Canada through McKin Health. And I've already seen some questions regarding reimbursement. So these products are covered under some provincial healthcare programs, namely Ontario and Quebec, and most extended healthcare providers as an ostomy accessory. And these can be purchased online through our website, as well as myostomy.ca, and in stores at Nightingale Medical Supplies in BC. So if you're interested in samples or more product information, we'll be sending out a post-webinar email after this webinar. So if you provided permission for us to contact you, you'll receive that email. Otherwise, feel free to email me. And I'll also include a link to our sample request form in the chat box as well. And finally, McKin will be attending the NSWOC conference in May. So visit our booth and see these products in person. And we'll leave the rest of the session for questions and answers. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Okay, thank you, Amy. And going to the questions, the first one is, how about the leaking on a urostomy? Where can we see, what can we see more frequently, underneath or in the clothes?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, in my practice, I would say under the flange. But
Under the flange.
that's just kind of my guess, but.
Yeah. The next question is, do we have any Canadian studies for the cost? On the cost?
I don't know. So I guess that those are going to be my answers for you guys.
Mhm.
I don't know. I didn't come across anything. And like I said, I didn't dig deep into literature. I just was trying to find something more interesting than me rattling on and on about stoma care.
We don't have any Canadian studies and no Canadian data to date. It was just launched in Canada on February the 1st. And so, as part of the sampling and evaluation, there'll be an evaluation component to the sampling program Amy will be sending out sampling to everybody who's interested afterwards. Reed and Theresa and the company have been very generous in providing some samples. We'll make sure that you get samples if you request them. But as part of that process itself, we will be requesting some eval feedback from you and from your customers. We'd love to hear what patients think. We think that it's going to be a benefit for patients and people living with an ostomy. We think that, when people have, first changes or changes that are successful, that emotionally, physically, they have better outcomes. And so, our goal is to make people aware that it's out there, and if they choose to use it or they find it beneficial, then we would love to provide samples for them after that.
Okay. The next question's for Laureen. What can be the most common cause of the leakage?
I didn't dig into that in the literature or the studies, so I'm not going to touch that one. Sorry.
Just from our experience, if you don't mind me piping in,
Absolutely not.
It's from what I've understood from the people that I've spoken with and the nurses, it's the improper fitting of a pouching system, irregular shaped stomas that are too close to the belly button. If they have divots or little creases, it's very hard to pack those in so that something can stay attached. And then also if there's peristomal skin complications, that can also lead to a moist skin, and that also detaches. So those are just some of the things that I've understood.
Okay, thank you. The next question is probably for Reed and Theresa, and it's, what's the Stomagienie made of?
Well, it's a paper tube. So I didn't actually show you. I think Theresa showed you on a slide, but it's a paper tube, and it's has a super absorbent insert. So they can actually, one of the training things we have for people that have very sensitive skin, they can actually pull this out a little bit at the end, curl it over the end of the tube, and then place it up against their skin. It's a nice soft feeling.
Wow. And can that be washed?
No, they're disposable. They're one-time use disposable.
And the super absorbency is a medical grade fabric, and is also biodegradable.
Okay. Now, here's a question. It's got a few different components. It's around the cost. So how much does it cost? We already know that you've said it's disposable, so it's not reusable. And if the flange goes over it, will it stretch the adhesive?
I can address the stretch adhesive. So it basically, as it's going down the slide, it will conform as it's going down. So I don't know if you can see that as it's sliding down, it doesn't affect it that much. Depending on how tight they cut the base plate, it could be. There's actually some of the base plates that have softer adhesive. They'll kind of turtleneck and then come back around the stoma.
And I can address the pricing question. So they come in a package of 10 for $52.40.
And then for oval shaped stomas, we found one of our nurses gave us this little aha light bulb moment. You can actually squeeze it into an oval and it will hold the shape. And then when they're finished, you just plug it and throw it away.
Okay. The next question is, where can you purchase these in Ontario? This person can't find them on Amazon or CanMed Direct or Payless Medical. How would they get them in Ontario, Michael?
We have the McKin website is selling them on the McKin website. We're using the suggested retail site there. So patients, clients can purchase them directly from McKin. We think that most people will buy them from their existing ostomy provider. So whether they're buying them from CanMed or Payless or well.ca or whoever, Ontario Ostomy Supply, whoever, they'll continue to buy products from them. McKin is a medical distributor, so We do have a retail component here in British Columbia, but our McKin business is really about distributing products across Canada and making them available to other retailers and making them available to acute care facilities that are interested in the products that we represent. So, if there is a preferred vendor and you want us to reach out and explain, that you saw us or you had a conversation with us and you're interested in bringing it in, we would be happy to chat with them about bringing the products in. We do have there is one online retailer, it's called Ostomy.ca, that is currently carrying them. So we've noticed that Ostomy.ca is carrying the products. They reached out to us, they carry the CUI product as well. So it is available on those websites, McKin and Ostomy.ca. And if you're in BC, we would love to supply our rarely qualified and very good suppliers that we have out of here too. There was a question about BC Pharmacare, and so I saw that came up too. So it's not currently covered by BC Pharmacare. We've reached out to Pharmacare. Again, it's a brand new product in Canada. So some of the provincial reimbursement agencies, whether it's AADL or Pharmacare in BC or SAIL or OHIP or whatever it is, right? We're working with them and developing some education and some literature for them to take a look at. I think that it fits under the ostomy accessory category in most provinces, and I suspect that once they've had a chance to see it and evaluate it, that it will be covered. I'm seeing a note here about NIHB. So again, same thing. We had an initial discussion with them about the product and they want more information. And so we're reaching out to them now. We suspect that most people through their extended health, to whatever extent they have ostomy coverage on their extended health, this would qualify under ostomy accessories and it will be covered by that as well.
Excellent. Okay, next question is for Reed and Theresa again. Can the hand-free mount be used in any bathroom or does it require a countertop surface for securement?
Well, we've actually have a plexiglass option. It's a small rectangle sheet of plexiglass that you can place on a countertop and it'll stick perfectly onto that plexiglass. So if you didn't have something that was conducive to a good seal with this, with the bottom of the hands-free, we do have an option where you could put it on like a plate type thing that would sit on the countertop. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
No, very good question. How much are they used in acute care post-op?
I can address that just from the US standpoint. A lot of hospitals are now adopting this as their treatment pattern, their education. So it begins in the hospital, right, post-op, and then it follows to home health here or rehab, and then they can order it from their distributor after that going forward. It makes for a much more streamlined and better recovery process and leading them to hopefully a much better life.
Okay. This is an interesting question. Again, I think this will go to Reed. This person had some patients try them and wondered why they're so long. What was your experience in developing this project? Why are they so long?
Another great question, because they were quite longer than this in the beginning.
Yeah.
So they change, and it's everybody has a different amount of output that they're dealing with. So we have the sizes from, something of this size compared to this size, obviously is going to hold a lot more output. So they actually go down to a 1/2 inch size, and we sell a lot of those. There's a lot of people that use them, and they're not going to hold as much. So there is that fine line between making them long enough where they can get the capacity, the volume inside of them. And we've done a lot of tests with patients to figure out this exact 5 inch size.
Okay. If a patient has a very unusually shaped stoma or larger stoma, how hard is it for them to get a personalized version of this?
It's not hard at all. So we do that and the custom adapter size. So the custom adapters, we usually turn around within a day. If they send us the picture of the back of the base plate, I can convert that into a 3D file. And we talked about the flexibility of that. But we also have if somebody has a smaller stoma, so like this is a 7/8 inch stoma, and this is a 1 7/8 inch cartridge, so they can put that over their stoma and capture 3 times as much output by using a larger cartridge. And a lot of nurses like this too, because when you're seeing a patient, you can just, you don't have to worry about how much output they're going to have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and there was another question in the same the same area around when the stoma changes size and shape post-op, can you get the cartridges to accommodate that?
Well, one thing on that too, that I think we see a lot, Theresa might be able to address on this, but I think a lot of nurses, or is it the patients that will, when they leave the hospital, they'll actually get 3 different sizes. So if they're in groups of 10, they'll get the size of the stoma now and the descending sizes, the next 3 sizes. And then they're prepared. They may not even use the first 10 before it changes, but it gives them some flexibility.
Right. So you did give an example of, I think there was a photograph that showed the counter mount and the fact that you could use this product almost hands-free. Have you had any experience with blind patients using this
Yes.
particular technology? Could you describe what that was like?
Yep, they required a caregiver. A lot of the people that I spoke with, or they are legally blind, and now being able to use the Stomagienie by feel, they're independent. They can do their pouch change themselves. I've spoken to many of these people, and it has been a real life-changing experience for them. And then I just saw real quick in the chat, yes, the cartridge and the interior are biodegradable, but the plug is not yet.
And just to add to that too is, and a lot of people that might use the hands-free in the beginning, depending on what their needs are, eventually don't need it. So they get to where they're using the cartridge without it, but it's a good kind of a training wheels type thing to get them started.
Yeah. Any issues if the patient's using stoma paste?
Yes, there is. And that's something that you need to put directly onto the skin, not onto the base plate. So yes,
Okay.
any accessory that they use now can be used with a Stomagienie.
Okay. Are there any educational videos for patient teaching?
Michael, Amy?
So I just pasted a link into the chat box, and that link will lead you to a page with more information as well as demonstration videos. And you can also put in your sample requests there as well.
Okay. How much does the handlebar to hold the Stomagienie cost? Because a lot of people have dexterity issues and they may be interested. How much does it cost, the handlebar?
Michael, do you have?
I don't have that number in front of me, Reed. Unfortunately, I am, if anybody needs to know specifically, just reach out to Amy or to me, and we'll be happy to quote you a price on the handlebar. Yep.
So I have the pricing. It's $42.15.
Thank you, Amy.
Excellent. And the last question here is, can the citations of the journal article mentioned be emailed to us?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, and that is all of the questions we have. And I did go through the chat before. I'm just looking. Oh, there was one. This is also a very interesting question. Is the company in the works of creating a reusable product?
No, not for the Stomagienie. The
No.
Stomagienie, we found that it, for both reasons, in the hospital setting, they're not in a situation to have to clean something, and then you're worried about leaving some leftover waste and things like that. That's not, it won't work with the super absorbent side of it as well. So it basically absorbs into the cartridge itself.
Yeah, and is it biodegradable?
Yes.
It is biodegradable. Okay, well,
Yes.
which is great. Looking at environmental impact, that's fantastic. Yeah, so we're right on 8 o'clock now, and so it's time to wrap up. So I would like to thank McKin Health again for supporting this education session this evening. And again, thank you to Laureen and Theresa and Reed for your excellent presentation, and Amy for giving your great summary at the end, and to Michael Arab for supporting this education event. I can tell by the number of hand clapping icons that are going up that everybody has gotten a lot out of this presentation. And so we will be following up with a certificate of attendance and sending it out by email. You'll probably get it by early next week. And this webinar recording will be posted for viewing at nswoc.ca in the webinar section. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at another NSWOC webinar. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.